Hello there, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Temple of the Exploding Head Omnibus Part 2. I almost tongue-tied myself. Part 2, Chapter 2, a Pewter pistol. So last week, we came to the end of Part 1. Sam, crazy little Sam, is starting to do all these weird things that's got Kay scratching his head. All of a sudden, she's obsessed with books and machines. And she sees a book that Kay has shown her in the infamous 8-sided library. And some people have called me on the carpet, like you say, so Ren, they can't waft in. There's no secret components or compartments. It's just a 9-inch high squeeze. Now, being an avid caver, I'm not a pro caver by any stretch, just a hobbyist, an enthusiast of caving. 9 inches ain't much, and unless you're the skinniest of skinny, you're gonna get stuck. AF, yes you are. And that's just not big enough. And you're probably right. I tend to get really excited, exaggerating sizes, whether really, really big or really, really small. So yeah, it probably is a little small. And it's probably quite a bit bigger than that. But just in my exuberance, I misstated. I didn't misstate, but I effed it up. Okay, so let's move on from that. Sam is all excited with machines, and Kay's like, what machine are you all excited about, Sam? Oh, this one here. And she points to the Malice Mirror, which is a legendary League artifact, a mirror that can do lots of things. And in the Bloodstein books, we see the Malice Mirror in action. Yes, we do. And Kay's like, why that one? And she says, oh, we have one at home and it's broken. I'm like, you have the Malice Mirror at your home? You know, it's just not... Nobody has the Malice Mirror at their home except for the Blanchfords, of course. It's just a very rare, very exotic item. So obviously Sam was just fooling about and giving him just a BS answer. She was concentrating on another machine. And in the next chapter, Part 2, Chapter 1, we actually find out what machine Sam was after. The legendary Oberphiliax. A machine that has everyone scratching their heads, especially in the Science Ministry and the Sisters, as it was created by Lord Revis of Want, who was well known for creating way cool stuff. He created a lot of cool stuff, very imposing stuff that's almost like magical in their abilities. And people assume, well, if Lord Revis of Want is creating this Oberphiliax, it must be really awesome. But nobody could ever really figure out what it did or how it worked. Like, well, maybe Lord Revis, you can't hit one out of the park every single time, right? Maybe he just screwed up and he created something that doesn't work. And so eventually, after quite a bit of time of testing with the Oberphiliax, the Sisters eventually okay, we got our knickers all worked up for nothing because this thing doesn't seem to work. But in Sam's dream that she had once and never again, but never forgot, she dreamt of this machine, this Oberphiliax, and she dreamt of Lord Revis of Want, and he told her exactly what it did, and she was like, oh my god, really? Is that what it does? That's incredible. And then Lord Revis tells her, then we're going to use this machine to escape the League because we're sick and tired of getting harassed by the bloody Sisters. They just won't give me any peace, so we're leaving. We're going to Amira. There have been a lot of League homeworlds, and in the old days when the Elders were still alive, still a thing, the Elders fed on starlight, and the League, or the Elder kind, they're sort of like the Silver Surfer in Marvel Comics. Galactus had a herald, and he would go around looking for suitable planets for Galactus to consume. That's kind of what the League did. They would scout out ahead and find suitable stars that the Elders could consume. But unlike Galactus, who didn't give a toot if anybody was being harmed by his consumptions, he didn't care. The Elders did care. They wanted to find uninhabited star systems where, they were going to suck the life out of the star, but it wouldn't cause any harm to anybody. They were good in that way. And the League would scout out ahead, find stars for them, make sure that they were uninhabited, make sure that the Elders could consume these stars and nobody would be harmed. And then the League would settle in like a home world nearby. And so there was Emira. And then once the star that they were feeding on could no longer sustain them, they would move on. And then there was Lemuria, and then there was Ing, and then there was Cana, where they currently are. But the Elders, once they got to Cana, died off, or they disappeared. Something happened to the Elders, and they vanished. Anyways, I'm on a bloody side kick. Anywho, Lord Reaver Savant went to Emira, which was said to be a paradise, even better than Cana is, and Cana's a pretty cool world. So Sam, we see in Sam's dream that she is after this machine, this Oberphiliac. She never knew its name. That's the only thing he didn't tell her in her dream, is what's its gosh darn name. But then she finds it in Kay's book, and now she has a name to go with it, Oberphiliacs. And by golly, once Sam has got something in her little head, it's not coming out. So in the next few chapters, including this one that we're about to read, Sam starts doing some goofy, weird things. I mean, I'm not going to say much more because I'll give it away, but he's doing weird stuff, and Kay's like, what the heck is this girl doing? But anywho, let's get started here, and if it's quick enough, if we get through this chapter quick enough, we'll move on to the next chapter, which is called Hei. I wonder what that is. But let's proceed immediately. Temple of the Exploding Head Omnibus, Book 1, The Dead Held Hands, Part 2, Chapter 2, A Pewter Pistol.
We used to be evil once, and the gods are still punishing us.
Sam fell into a genuine funk as winter faded, going through bouts of sadness alternating with euphoria and then delirium. Kay asked her what was wrong, and she would say nothing. Nothing's wrong. She became watchful, looking over her shoulder, always aware of what she said and did, carefully considering every word she spoke. Sometimes she jumped back, startled. Sometimes she fled from nothing as if pursued, and then wept. One day they were out wandering in the grove and came into a clearing. Sam found one of the ancient oak trees that was so old it had reached giant proportions. There were lots of those old giants scattered about. She saddled up to the tree and began happily carving their initials into the ancient bark with her fingernail. Kay looked over her shoulder to see what she was doing. She turned, smiling, wanting him to see what she'd drawn. And then her smile faded. She turned, picking up the folds of her gown, and ran from him, chain rattling, covering the ground as only she could. "Sam!" Kay cried, taking off after her. He might have been imagining it, but Kay thought he'd seen a ghostly hand reaching out for her just before she took off. Given Sam's odd behavior, Kay began to think she was sick or addled by some sort of malady. He wondered if the wine she'd had at the Falling in Love ball was having some lingering effects. When she wasn't around, mostly on Tuesdays, when she had familial duties to attend, he started doing research on the House of Monima, but there wasn't much out there other than the usual postings and inquiries for fortune tellers, prostitutes, and seers. Their ability to see the future and their skills as prostitutes seemed all they contributed to the general populace. They didn't appear to be part of the league at all, other than those select occupations. The lack of solid information was maddening. He tried inquiring with Samaritan Inez of the Hospitallers regarding Monimas, and he wasn't much help. Apparently, the Hospitallers knew little about them as well. Pacing about in his tower one afternoon when Sam was gone, he had a sudden brainstorm. Sarah, his cousin. Sarah had all sorts of information she'd collected on Monimas and berserkicides, one of her favorite lurid topics. Sarah was quite meticulous in the documentation of her passions. Of course, being gone for the winter in Esther, Sarah's tower was locked up tight, and the exterior was proofed against the waft, as were all towers at Castle Blanchford. Once inside a tower, one could waft all they wanted, but one could not waft from the outside to the inside. However, Kay didn't need to waft in. He had the zip line running from his tower all the way to Sarah's bedroom on the 42nd floor. He got his dusty zipliner out of the closet. He really didn't use it much. It was Sarah who did most of the zipping back and forth with her zipliner, and fastened it to the line. He turned it on and engaged the servo motors, and soon he was dangling in midair by the handles, thousands of feet above the distant rocks below. The zipliner was fast and covering the distance. After only a second or two, he was standing on Sarah's balcony. The bedroom within was much neater and more girly than one might expect from the rough and tumble tomboy she liked to present herself as. It was done up in teals and yellows. Sarah secretly favored yellow, and had white provincial furniture, again of a distinctly girlish flavor. Her closet doors were open and mostly empty, quite different from Kai's 3-story closet, to be sure. There were stuffed toys from her childhood arranged here and there, along with a wall full of pictures, many of her parents, Lady Poe and Lord Peter, many of his father and mother, and many of the Duke and the Duchess Tory Jane. There were also photos of her older brother, Milos, whom Kay barely knew, and her baby sister, Millie, and a healthy amount of pictures of Philip, Kay, and her. Clearly Sarah liked keepsakes, and she obviously cherished her family, Philip and Kay especially. Kay exited her bedroom and entered the tower's main corridor. Kay knew that Sarah's favorite place to practice her love of the sensational was in the mystery library on the 50th floor, an equal distance from Philip's bedroom on the 58th floor. Everything was locked, so Kay settled back to waft up. It took forever. His waft really was quite terrible. How angry Sam would be at such a display. After a few minutes, he appeared on the 50th floor. The entrance to the library had a large slate over the door stating who was welcome to enter and who was not. On the welcome side was Sarah, Philip, Kay, Milos, mother and father, and on the forbidden side was Lady Kylos, Bath Loxy, and a recently added Lady Sammy Doran of Monima. Kay chuckled and entered. Sarah's mystery library was well stocked with books of monsters, ghosts, urban legends, and local lore, all carefully shelved, categorized, and perfectly taken care of. The large room was a paradise of comfortable, overstuffed chairs, a Nadine wood table from Castle Durst, several older model terminals, and a cooler always stocked with drinks and snacks, though it was empty now that Sarah was away for the winter. It was a perfect hangout area. Sarah would make a wonderful librarian. Her collection was truly quite impressive, and the organization of it all was a sight to behold. Unlike many girls who were difficult to buy for, Sarah was easy. A well-appreciated birthday gift idea for her was always a new book of the lurid. Against the north wall was a detailed relief map of the winding Gaston Way, haunted, the lair of another of Sarah's favorite new monsters, the Wraith of Gaston. Recorded in holographic projections were Sarah's meticulous notes on the locations of various sightings and places where she hoped the three of them would investigate this coming summer. There are even names of people she wanted to interview regarding the haunting. At the other end of the library, in a cozy nook surrounded by shelved books, she kept much of her monoma berserkicide materials. Sitting on one of the shelves was a bleached, partially fossilized skull, supposedly of a berserkicide, though Kay doubted it was real. It had a round hole placed between its eye sockets, rubbed smooth by Sarah constantly sticking her fingers into it. The skull also sported a fearsome set of overly large, sharpened teeth that were quite hideous to look at. It was Sarah's prized possession and was, according to her, a gift from Carahil, an elemental spirit created by her mother some years ago. She said she promised Carahil she'd keep it safe here in the Mystery Library. Looking around in the quiet, orderly splendor of the library, Kay saw little images of Carahil all over the place, as wall decorations, as book stops on the shelves, and as little smiling plushies placed against the wall. Seeing him was comforting, like he was here protecting the place. Grabbing as much as he could carry off the shelves, he sat down at the table and started reading, though he dreaded what he might find. Berserkicides. They seemed creatures right out of a horror vid or a cheap, scary book, yet there they were. Berserkicides were monoma men, women, or children who had gone mad and become deformed. With 4 arms, they shrieked with rage and killed any who crossed their path. They were said to appear in people's homes, in people's bedrooms, naked and glistening, black claws flashing. They were said to be unreasonable, unstoppable, and could absorb a massive amount of damage before dying. There were 3 topics that Sam refused to talk about. Those included her home by the shores of Lake Monoma, some of the more detailed aspects of monoma life, and the berserkicides, whose names she never uttered. Clearly they were monsters for a stormy night and a vivid imagination. His father believed that they didn't exist at all and were products of either a hoax or hysteria. Kay sometimes had a nightmare in which he would wake one morning and find Sam had become a berserkicide, her claws reaching for his throat. It was a dream he was ashamed of and pushed away, but still, the hows and whys were endless. If real, how did one become a berserkicide? If real, why did one become a berserkicide? And Sam was mum. He found all sorts of collected information on berserkicides in Sarah's books and documents, but scant little on standard healthy monomas. Apparently that didn't interest her as much. As he sorted through the documents, he tried to bypass the ones regarding berserkicides, but eventually his curiosity got the better of him. Berserkicide. Bestial rage. Extremely violent and dangerous. 4-armed. Extremely powerful. Exposed and enlarged pineal gland to aid in a rush of anger, followed by great cunning and cruelty. Death of personality. Permanent. No known cure and no known cause. Monomas mistrusted in many quarters due to berserkicide events. Monomas often escorted out of many Remnav cities under sisterhood surveillance. Death of personality. Death of soul. Death of his Sam. Shuddering, he continued on. Finally, he found something which seemed promising and didn't involve berserkicides. It read, Headswarm, a semi-catatonic condition entered into by members of the House of Manama, highlighted by extreme apathy and delirium, lack of recognition and place, lack of muscular control, general weakness and listlessness. Headswarm is entered into when a Manama believes that he or she is about to die. He put the document down and sat there. Headswarm, about to die. Sam seemed to be exhibiting some of these symptoms, but not all of them. Even in her blackest and most sullen of moods, Sam recognized Kay and knew where she was. He read on, but those words kept popping into his head. Headswarm, about to die. Berserkicide, death of personality, no known cure, no known cause. Manama's mistrusted. Manama's detained and escorted away. He saw one more thing that caught his interest. A short entry reading, White Amelia, herbaceous flowering plant of the family Astercidae, common in the Lake Manama region of Cana that thrives well in shade and low light, often used symbolically in Manama mating rituals, especially the Nebulon, Astralon, and Mincer tribes. What is that white flower he'd received in the Inlock letter? Mating rituals? That was interesting. Sam hadn't mentioned anything about that. He found little else of use. He put everything back where he got it, knowing the anal Sarah would no doubt discover it and make a fuss when she returned. Berserkicide, Headswarm, White Amelia. These names floated through his head for the rest of the afternoon. Winter moved on. Kay tried to ease Sam's flagging spirits by taking her to the village one day when she was in a particularly sad mood. Lady Kylos tagged along as well. Trips to the village usually made Sam happy, but not today. They strolled the vast maze of shops and emporiums, Kai always wanting to stop in the more expensive stores. Quietly, Sam looked around and Kay offered to get her anything she wanted. Sometimes she wanted certain things, but today she wasn't interested enough to want anything. Kai certainly had no qualms about buying, and soon she had an armload of bags and packages. Sam, in her usual red dress and goggles, seemed determined to be dour. Headswarm, lack of recognition. Sam? Sam? Kay kept saying, trying to see if she recognized him. What, Kay? She slowly replied, and he'd be appeased for a while. She also recalled from his reading, Headswarm, lack of reflex. He tried poking her in the shoulder and back every so often to see how she'd react. She got annoyed after a bit and poked him back in the sternum, hard. Ow! He cried. Kai became quite hungry as the afternoon of shopping wore on. As they walked towards a nice cafe, they passed a small curio shop near the waterfront called the Mystery Den. The window of the shop was cluttered with a vaudevillian arrangement of cheap and poorly made trinkets, bathed in flaked copper and sprayed on pewter. It was a classic souvenir shop, clearly a place for tourists and new fleet crew arrivals to buy inexpensive items to send home to their families. Kay and Kai didn't look twice at the place. Sam, though, took one look at the eclectic and rather seedy offerings crowding in the window and immediately became interested. She put her pale hands against the glass and peered in. The intricate and expensive goggles she wore stood out in stark contrast to the crap items on display. The heat from her medallion quickly steamed the window. Whatever funk she had been in seemed to be gone in a moment. "Kay?" she said excitedly. "May we go in?" You're not serious, are you?" Kai said in a prissy voice. Sam didn't answer. She went to the door and flew inside, ringing the bell. Looking around to make sure not too many people were about, Kay and Kai followed her in, and they felt a bit sullied, like they were walking into a dirty courtesan's den. Inside, surrounded by the seedy claptrap, moribund intaglio, and shelf-lined standard trinket fare, Sam seemed intoxicated. Mouth open, she browsed around the semi-lit shop, picking up a whole armful of tacky things best left unselected. When the shopkeeper saw Kay and Kai, he was thrilled. "Oh, my lord, my lady," he exclaimed, throwing his hands up. "This is a great day. How may I humbly assist you?" Kay was mortified. My friend here from the south seems keen on purchasing a memento," he stammered. "Ah, I have many to choose from. Please, may I point out a new shipment of wonderful commemorative garments that have only recently arrived." He pointed to a far wall, and there, neatly folded, was a hideous assortment of workmen's clothing, all stamped Blanchford Village somewhere on the cloth. A few had poorly constructed hollow pictures of Lord Davish and Countess Sigillis's smiling faces. Kay wondered if his father was aware that these items, or this wretched store for that matter, existed. Yes, if my friend wishes, we might select some of those later," Kay said, wanting to get out of the premises immediately. Sam appeared to have made up her mind on something. She approached Kay. "May I have this, Kay? Will you buy it for me, please?" She had discarded most of what she'd been holding and was apparently settled on a positively grotesque pewter casting of a long-barreled pistol mounted on a flimsy stand. It was clearly one of the most garish and unsightly desk ornaments ever conceived. The base of the stand had a plaque reading Blanchford PTVA, the old Poltava. Apparently this grim trinket was supposed to be a likeness of the famous Blanchford PTVA pistol once made right there in the village, in the factories now churning out his mother's fabrics. His grandfather, Lord Sadric, had abolished the practice of firearm producing, and the weapon immediately fell into lore as a prize collector's item. This brutally ugly piece of pewter cast gimcrack, long-barreled and ungainly, looked nothing like the PTVA, but rather like a dueling pistol. The Poltava was a short-barreled, elegant gun. Kay could easily imagine the same image, most likely having been stamped out in some sweaty shop in Calvert, being passed off as a Grenville 40, a Dare 88, or an Inzeroff D4. Depending on where you were when you bought it, the plaque changed accordingly. "Sam?" Kay asked. "You want this?" "Yes, please, Kay, may I have it?" "But Sam, it doesn't even look like a Poltava." "Please, Kay, I really want it." Thoughts of Headswarm again entered his mind. Without another word, Kay, holding the mounted pistol as if it were soaked in urine, walked to the shopkeeper and put it on the counter, the mounted pistol wobbling slightly on its flimsy, soldered metal legs. "Oh, that's a true beauty, sir. The old Poltava, nothing like it will ever be made again," the excited shopkeeper said. Kai had selected a shirt with a hideous hollow picture of Countess Sigillis stamped on the breast and tossed it on the counter. "I'm going to blackmail Mother with this later," she whispered happily. Kay looked at the shirt and had to laugh a bit. There was a terrible picture of his mother on the breast, truly terrible. Her hair was not set correctly, her smile was goofy and unready to be taken, and her finger was precariously close to her nose. In fact, it was in her nose, truth be told. He wondered how and why such a thing had ever been mass-produced and put out for sale in the first place. Okay. He read the tag. It had been made by the D of O clothiers. The D of O, the Duchess of Olin. Dimples, his mother's constant nemesis, had struck again. Kay shook his head and smiled. Dimples was a relentless prankster. No harm done. The shopkeeper told Kay the price for these two items, and he was appalled. 4 haters? These things combined weren't worth a quarter of a hater. But with Sam and Kai standing there smiling and watching, Kay paid him the money. The shopkeeper put the items into a bag, and then the three shoppers exited the store, Kay very thankful to do so. The purchase made Sam's day. She cast aside her previous funk and walked happily at Kay's side. Once or twice she pulled him into an alcove and passionately kissed him, whispering of the chain and the thing she was going to turn into for him later. They went to lunch, and all through the meal Sam kept peeking into the bag as if some rare treasure rested inside. It was the happiest he'd seen her in a while, so, ugly or not, he was glad he bought it for her. If that was strange, the next day Sam did something even stranger. They went deep into the grove, towards the back quarter, past the 10 gardens, a walk of several miles. Sam chattering happily as they walked. She was carrying the pewter pistol he'd bought for her the day before. They entered a huge oak clearing somewhere in the far depths of the grove, and Sam stopped. "Will you give me a few moments, Kay?" Sam asked. She gave him a kiss and walked away. Mount Vith rose majestically in the distance. That huge volcanic mountain, the old man of the north, looked marvelous from here. Kay admired the mountain for a bit. Sam had wandered far from him. She stood about 100 feet away, busy doing something with the ground. She was leaning over, her hands digging into the dirt. Humorously, her rear end and bustle stuck up in the air as she worked. "Sam, what are you doing?" he asked, nearing her. She had dug a hole into the dirt and partially buried the ugly pistol he'd bought her in the village. "Are you a dog, bearing a bone, Sam?" "Sala," she said in Anui, meaning hush, as she patted the dirt down, stood up and examined her work. She looked at it and tapped her chin with her finger. She spoke in Anui, something she often did when she was preoccupied. Do you think this will be safe out here, Kay? Do you think anybody will accidentally kick it or uncover it?" He responded in Elder. "Well, you never know, but I doubt it. It's a big grove, and nobody comes out here too often. If you really wanted to get rid of that ugly thing, I suggest a trash bin." Sam clapped the dirt off her hands and put her arms around him. No, it's fine where it is." "Why did you bury it, other than for obvious reasons?" "I put it here as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "A reminder that here it begins." Kay laughed and spun her around. "Oh, okay, Sam, thanks. I'll make a note of it." They moved out of the clearing, Sam looking back over her shoulder several times as they walked. And with that, we conclude Part 2, Chapter 2 of Pewter Pistol. So, Sam is doing weird things, and Kay is worried about her and wondering what if she's got some sort of medical problem. And he goes into Sarah's mystery library. It's like a library, like a kind of like a clubhouse where they all hang out. And Sarah has collected lots of books of ghost stories and urban legends and unsolved mysteries, things like that, things that she finds fascinating. Sarah is very meticulous and organized, and Kay always notes she'd make a great librarian, but don't mention that to her because she would probably punch you. But she has a fascination for berserkicides, and we've been hearing that word a lot, berserkicide. And here we find out exactly what it is. It's a berserkicide is a monoma, and it can be a male monoma, a female monoma, it can be a child, it can be an older one, any monoma that has all of a sudden turned into a four-armed, slavering monster. When any monoma at any time can become a berserkicide, and it's something Sam never talks about. And nobody knows why it happens or how it happens. It just happens a lot, and with increasing frequency. And occasionally people will wake up and there'll be a berserkicide in their bedroom with them, ready to kill them. They are unrelenting. They are nothing like who they were before they became a berserkicide. They're wholly cruel, cunning, evil. They will just their whole goal seems to be to create mayhem and chaos until they are put to death. And it's hard, and it can be hard to kill them because they can take a lot of damage before they die. Berserkicide, something every Monoma fears, and Sam is no exception. He finds out, berserkicides always have 4 arms, so they grow another pair of arms when they become a berserkicide. They also have a hole in the middle of their head that appears, and they have just these massive set of sharp teeth. And once you become one, that's it. There's no going back until you're dead. The personality of whoever it was prior to becoming a berserkicide is gone. They become just a horrid, cruel, slavering beast. Kay also finds out that there's a condition that Monomas enter into called Headswarm, where Monomas can see their death in the future. And once they've seen their death and it's upon them, they sort of enter into this catatonic state called Headswarm. It's like when you've reached that moment that you feared, you put your mind someplace else, into a place where there's no pain and no sadness. You could stick a knife into one of them who's in Headswarm and they wouldn't feel it. It's just like a way, it's basically sticking your head in the sand, saying, okay, the moment I feared is upon me, and how I'm going to deal with it, I'm just going to let my mind drift away. Headswarm, that's what it's called. And we've heard that term before. If you recall back to the appendices, the Born in the Jar prologue 3, Sam talks about Headswarm, her family would fall into, and it's just something that she's always been afraid of. Also, we learn about a flower called White Amelia. It's kind of like a daisy. That's how it's always portrayed in the pictures, and you can see it in a lot of different pictures. It's like a flower that survives well in low light, and Lake Monoma is usually very foggy. So if a flower is to grow there, it needs to be something that can handle reduced lighting very well, and this White Amelia flower does that. And it also has certain properties where it, depending on the time of its maturation, it can be deadly. Its nectar can kill a bug that goes to drink from it. But if it's the right bug at the right time, then it gets a sweet treat, a sweet, nourishing treat. And the Monomas use it in their mating rituals for that very purpose. And they also use it in their jars. When they create the Monoma jar for their children, they line the jar with these White Amelia plants and fill it with brine, and then put their undeveloped young in it, and then they finish out their maturation in this jar. They also, if you recall, when Sam was dreaming about Kay as a little girl, her brothers and sisters said take a White Amelia flower from the wild and plant it near the mourning wall. And once you do that, your dreams will vanish and you won't have to deal with them anymore. So White Amelia is pretty important in Monoma culture. And in that in-lock letter Kay got, there was a dried White Amelia flower, and he's not sure why it was in there or what it means. But now he knows a little bit. It's involved with Monomas and their mating rituals. So something to keep in mind. Also, the thing with the mystery den, the curio shop. Again, if you remember back to the Sam prologue, she had a vision and she saw this shop in her visions. I won't go into too much detail, but that is a very important point that Sam has just passed. Seeing this shop that she predicted years ago as a child now sets things into motion. So she gets Kay to buy this crappy ass pewter pistol that says it's a Poltava. It doesn't look like a Poltava. And then the next day Sam buries it out in the grove. So just keep that event in mind. That's the last time we see it for 2 books. We will see it again, though, in the 3rd book. And there's a very specific reason why it's out there and why Sam did the things that she did In any event, it has gone on too long. We can't get to Hei this week. We will get to Hei next week. Hei is one of my favorite chapters in this book. It's pretty cool. It's mysterious. It's fun. But we will get to Hei next week. Just so you know, Hei is one of the sisters' places. They have 25 strongholds on Cana, and Hei is one of them. And we'll see what happens at Hei next week. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I'm your host, Ren. Peace out.